Well, this is myself as a hobbyist painting my own car, attempting to paint it like a shop would using an HVLP gun. And I put out several videos. I mean, there's been some interest. I'm surprised. You know, this was just sort of me having fun, but it took on a life of its own. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually show you some angles of the car. So you'll be looking at how the light reflects off this body of this Golf Yellow BMW 2002. See if you like what you see as far as how well the panels have been blocked, and then what do you think about the finish. First part of what I'm going to share with you is actually me doing a test panel before I paint the car, which will also be in the video as much as I could do it. I put in about probably 300-400 hours at this point, and the paint part's only about 5 hours. But I finally reached the point where I was ready to actually lay paint, and I realized, oh my God, I didn't have a level of confidence that I wanted. I was afraid I was going to screw something up that would have been devastating after all of that work prepping the body. So I'm going to share with you a test panel. I had an old hood from a 2002, which I shot some high build on and prepped it with the level of a quality surface that I wanted for a base and a clear. I wanted to see how I could use my gun. I wanted to see what kind of air pressure at the tip I needed, how I needed to move the gun. And if you watch this first video, look how I hold the HVLP gun, the distance from the surface and the proper angle. It's like almost having a paintbrush attached to the tip of your gun, but not really. It's sort of an invisible paintbrush. I borrowed that from Kevin Eads from Eastwood. I thought he was a great teacher. I recommend his videos. But anyway, take a look at my car, and then see my test panel, and then we'll get to painting the car here in this video. Okay, here's the finished product, and I just say I'll let you be the judge. And you really need to be able to get that nice angle on the surface. Does that appeal to you? Does it look like I did a good job of block sanding? Okay. Nice and smooth, not a lot of ripples, dents, or dimples, which I hate when I see a finish. Okay, not a lot of overspray in places you don't want. All right. Okay, guys, like I said, if you like what you see, then hang around, because this is what I did. And I like to look at the car, different types of light, direct sunlight, lesser sunlight, especially on those curves right there. Kind of work your way down the body panel. You see if it's as straight as you think it should be. Nice clear coat. Do it with the light on. Okay, here you go. Here's my test panel. Shot 3 coats of clear. Okay, first coat, very light as a tack coat. Make sure I didn't get any sags. And then I waited 15 minutes for it to flash off or do its thing. And then I shot my next coat, which I waited 15 minutes after that to shoot my final coat. This left side's got some dust nibs in it, but it's major orange peel, so that's where the color sanding's going to come in. Ew, orange peel. But I'm going to give it 2 weeks. From what I understand, when you sand clear, you either sand it within like a few days or you have to wait about 2 weeks. So there's this window of sanding opportunity, then it sort of shifts around, and it gets hard after 2 weeks. So I'm going to step away from it, give myself a chance to do a little bit of color sanding in 2 weeks. I did the trunk area too. I won't sand this, but this turned out pretty good. I like what I see in here. Nice clear in there. So I want to get this done so I can button up the car before I paint it the outside. So it's all a process, I guess. Be a nice shine on that. Okay, so you've seen my test panel. It's kind of funny. I went ahead and did that panel and had the car ready, and then I took 2 weeks off, and then I came back and color sanded, and I'll show you some color sanding later in this video. I didn't share any on that test panel, but I did color sand it and I liked what I got. This part of the video is going to be actual painting. I wish I had more time to be detailed about explaining what I did, but when you're in the middle of doing what you're doing, you just don't have time to both try and shoot video and fumble your way through trying to figure out how to paint your car the first time. So if I missed something, I'm sorry. Experts out there, you're going to say, well, that's kind of a stupid thing to do, and probably was. But again, if you like what you see, you like the finish I did, it wasn't that stupid. It was good enough for me. I saved money. I did a paint booth. I wish I had spent more time explaining that. The paint booth is basically in my garage. I made sure it was as clean as I could. I draped plastic on the ceiling and on the sides so that I didn't have any dust pockets in there. The biggest problem when you paint a car is that when you shoot, the gun blows enough air that it's going to kick dust up off the floor and it's going to blow it up to the other side of the car. So if you look carefully in my video, I've got the car jacked up as high as I can on jack stands. Okay, I went along and also made sure I kept the floor wet at all times. So that's going to get rid of that threat of kicking dust up off the floor. I had cleaned the floor as much as I could as well. The paint booth is basically, I had 3 box fans with my garage door closed on them and the spaces in between blocked out. Plus the one window in the garage, I put an AC air filter that you stick in your air conditioner in the window so that it was tight in there, and then I turned the fans on and you could actually feel the air sucking through that filter and down by your feet and out through those fans. Combined with the wet floor, and as well as getting a bunch of extra fluorescent lights and hanging them on the sides of the walls, so I had light shining on the side of the car as well on the top of the car. I had my ad hoc paint booth. Again, if you have a friend who's got a paint booth, or you know a shop that's willing to let you use theirs, by all means use it. It's the best way to go. I didn't. My car was stuck up on jack stands and I couldn't get it to a shop, and I didn't know anybody. I got away with it. I really think I did. I didn't get a lot of dust nibs. So this is it. I mean, if I miss things, you know, shoot me an email, ask me something. But this is the actual paint process, and we'll go. You know, share with you what I could. Okay, I'm setting up my gun now. HVLP. So this is for the real thing, base and clear for the car. The most important thing I'm trying to avoid is too much air. I discovered when you get a blast of air, you get some orange peel on the clear, and it also just blows everywhere. If you look at the gun, it should have one of these gauges right here. See that? If you look closely, there's a little green
sort of zone right there, So when you shoot, you should be on the low end, especially with the base and the clear. I put this valve in right here, so I can increase or I can change out my air pressure. Now this does have a valve here. The way you're supposed to set these things is you depress the trigger just a little bit, and then you can adjust that knob to where you want it. So every time you pull the trigger, it'll hit that zone. But because I was getting so much of a blast of air from my compressor, I decided to add this extra valve so that I'm on the low end of the green. So that's it's about 20 psi coming into the gun, but at the tip of the gun right here, it should be right now about 9 psi right there. That's 9. Okay, so you want 20 coming in, about 9 at the tip. You can't measure at the tip, you can only measure right here. And I've discovered a lot of it is just you kind of get a feel for it, especially with clear. When you're shooting clear, if it's going on smooth, especially on a horizontal surface, you know you're getting a good air pressure to lay it out smoothly. You're going to get some orange peel. You don't want to shoot too heavy on the sides of the car, you'll get sags and they're a bitch to get out. So, like I said, learning, but did my test panel, so I have a pretty good idea of what kind of air pressure I want to get a nice top clear coat that I won't have to spend too much time color sanding. Okay, so the other thing I've got is a filter to get any moisture coming out. Change it every time you shoot. So we're about done with getting this thing set up. So I'll show you what else I've been doing. Okay, paint time. This finish is smooth as the baby's ass. Sanded down to 600, and it's going. I'll go over it one more time with wax and grease remover, no dust nibs. Got my paint booth set up. All right, I'm going to start on this edge right here, top of the roof. I'm using Kevin Tetz's message. This is the gentleman from Eastwood. Go on YouTube, Google Eastwood, Kevin Tetz painting tips, and he gives you a good 30 minutes or so of good painting tips. He says start at the top of the hood, paint to the middle, okay? Then you go to the other side of the car, boom, 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 and you go from the middle of the hood over to that drip edge. So you get your roof painted. This is what he calls his push-pull method. Okay, so you're painting to the middle and you're picking up your wet line in the middle and you're going over to the edge. All right, then he drops down, comes to this rear quarter. Gonna focus on that alone. You start low, okay, paint up, and stop. Okay, then he comes all the way around to the other side of the car, and he goes to this quarter. Start low, paint up. Okay, since you're back here now, you paint from the hood and you paint the whole, trunk lid. So you're going to paint that whole trunk lid over to that wet edge on the other side where the quarter is. All right, since you're here, you're going to go ahead and paint your butt end, the rear of the car. Okay, so you got that part done. Again, this is what he calls his push-pull. Okay, it's a very methodical way. Have a method so you don't miss a panel. You don't want to shoot a little bit of base. I've shot base, thought I had it all, missed some, put clear on, then you're like you have a thin spot and you hate it for the rest of your life. So, okay. We come back over, leapfrog over to the driver's door, paint it up to here, but paint across over to here. You don't want to stop at the seam, you'll get buildup. Okay? And then Kevin goes over here, paints that other door from the bottom up, painting across the fender seam so you don't get buildup. Okay? Finally, what he does is he'll come to this fender, start at the bottom, paint up. This is what he calls his doghouse. Okay? Paints from the bottom of the fender up and actually over the entire hood this time. Okay? And then down to the other side. So you've painted both fenders crossing the hood coming down, then you paint your nose. And for me, one thing I got to do to start out with is I'm going to choke my spray gun to a narrow spray pattern so I can paint into these door jambs nice and tight. So that's one thing I'll do before I actually do that. So, there you have it. Okay, it's paint time. I've got some high quality golf yellow base coat, which is a 1-to-1 with this reducer, which I can also use from a clear. So it's a 1-to-1 of these. Make sure I stir it up real good. Okay. I use one of these graduated measuring cups. It's got little lines on it so you can tell where you are, and always use a filter when you pour into your HVLP gun. Now, I'm going to go ahead and mix my paint and give it about 10 minutes to sort of congeal after I stir it all together with the reducer and the paint, so it chemically does its thing before I shoot it. While I'm waiting for it to do that, I'll do my final wipe down on my car. I did do my my test shoot. I have less dust on the car now than I did before, so I'm blowing out all that residual shit that I had on the car in those hidden pockets. You can't find everything. When I was also going through the process, I double checked my tape one last time. If you see, I got the floor wet down. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the floor down one more time while I'm waiting for my base to do its thing before I actually start shooting it. I'm going to let it chemically mix up. Solvents. This is my base. You can really smell the solvents in this paint. I love the smell of solvents in the morning. It reminds me of victory. You smell that? You smell that? Apocalypse Now. If you're under the age of 40, forget that humor. Well, I wanted to share with you one thing at this point in the video. Using bases and clears that you shoot on cars are isocyanate based solvent paints, and they're incredibly toxic. I had invested in an air mask which actually had an air hose that ran to a pump outside of where I was working so I could get purely fresh air, and I had intended to use it. But in the middle of actually trying to paint the car, I started getting tangled up in those hoses, and I just had to abandon that, and it really bothered me because the gases alone, just not the particulate, the gases can hurt you, cause brain damage, and also damage your liver or whatnot. Luckily, I've had a checkup in the past since I did the car, and my blood count's okay, so I don't do this for a living, thank God. I did use a brand new respirator mask to keep the particulate out, and I relied on the fans to draw most of those clouds of isocyanate gases out of the garage. I wish I could have done it another way. I wanted to use a full bodysuit, didn't do that either because I just started getting so hot, started sweating a lot that I just couldn't pull it off. So I ran the risk of a little bit of a health issue here to get this freaking car painted, but it had been so long, and I was moving residences, and I had to get the car done, had to get it sent somewhere else so I could finish the mechanics, blah blah blah, whatever. Things don't always work out the way you plan. I don't demonstrate clear coat painting. I show you some of my painting the base, but the clear is like painting the base. I think the mixing ratios are different for clear than base, but it's basically the same thing. In the next video, you'll see me, not this video, but the one where I actually color sand the clear, you'll see how the clear laid out. I did put on several coats of clear. There's not a lot of video of me actually swinging the gun around because that's kind of boring. Some of the conceptual stuff, how to set the gun, it's all there. So.
Well, I had to go back to my jobber and get more base. I didn't have enough base, so and I also got a tack rack, and I'm very satisfied with my paint booth. I have very little, if any, dust nibs. The other problem I did do is I had sags. I wasn't paying attention, and I was holding the gun in one location too much, and I got a sag in my base, so I had to sand that out, which is fine. Wet sand 400, just go over it again. The other problem is painting when you're not in the sunlight is you might get some spots where it's not as heavy, and the last thing I'm going to do is shoot clear on top of a base that's kind of thin, because you'll be haunting with it the rest of the car's life. So I got a little extra base, probably put on 4 coats just to make sure. You know, they recommend pushing it out in the sunlight. Well, I can't do that. It's up on jack stands, so I have artificial light. Hoping for the best, but I'm going to shoot extra heavy base because if it's easy to get it thin and miss it. I've done it before on just body pins. But I'm using my tack rag now and just gently running it across the surface. And I'll tell you, man, very little, if any, debris on that base. So I'm pleased with my paint booth. And I'm just going to go ahead and shoot my next series of base, and we'll be good to go. So, a few dust nibs here and there, getting most of them. I can feel them with the tack rag, and it's pulling them out. So she's smooth. So I'm going to shoot some base on the hood at this angle because I just have a hard time reaching over. Well, my painting is done. I shot my base, I shot my clear. Actually, I screwed up. I only had 1 quart of base, and I thought it was a little thin, so I had to stop what I was doing and drive about 15 miles up the road to my jobber, have him mix me up another quart of base, and so that was about a half hour to an hour out of the job. But the paint booth worked out well. Then I shot about 4 coats of clear, and I think it turned out pretty good. This is my first time. A few mistakes, but it took all day. I started like at 9 in the morning and finished it like at 5:30 to 6, just for flash times and whatnot. My only big problem that I had was I was spewing water from my gun, a little bit, water droplets. And I think my water filter had just become saturated, or there was moisture coming up the line in the connections to the gun. It was sort of flinging out a little bit, but I'm confident I can color sand out of those. For a first time, I think it's pretty good. I'll show you what I did. I guess that's about all. It was one solid day of painting, and it was probably another 30 days of, prior to that, the high build sanding. That process worked out. When I look at the car, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I spent that extra time because I have really straight panels. The color sanding will be the final test, and that'll be a challenge, not to cut through the clear. But anyway, let me show you what I got. Well, the car has been painted. It's actually been a week since I shot the clear. I've actually started color sanding right here. You can see the actual clear. More clear up here. Clear. That real sexy shine. It's weird, you got to cut it back down, yeah, in order to get it back up. But I did fairly well in that I don't have a lot of dust nibs. I have some, but they're manageable. And I'll tell you, the orange peel is not there at all. And that's all due to air pressure. If you keep that air pressure
coming into the gun around 20 to 25 psi, you will not get orange peel. Like I had on my test panel, I had orange peel, and it's just a lot of work to sand that stuff out. So that's nice. Several coats of base, several coats of clear. Took me all day. Wound up running out of base. Had to go get some more. I put on 3 to 4 coats of clear, but I just got so tired I couldn't do any more. My body hurt because you're doing a lot of bending over. You got to keep the floor wet. You got to make sure you don't screw up. I was spitting water out of my gun because my water filter, it's saturated. I didn't realize they could do that. Luckily it didn't hurt me too bad. So, a lot of lessons learned here. Change out that filter more often than not.